Thank you very much, David, and thank you for all coming and sitting in a nice shade and getting out of the sun to come and listen to me. So for those of you who don't know, EECA is the government agency that does the energy spot ads on TVs. We're also the agency that puts the fuel economy labels onto cars and how much your fridge or washing machine uses when you go and look at when to buy those. So just a little bit about who we are. The first thing I want to talk to you about is actually, first of all, about New Zealand's electricity generation. Because one of the common questions people have is, where is all the electricity going to come from our cars? And right now, 85% of the electricity that's generated in New Zealand comes from renewable energy sources. And we have a target to get to 90% for that. And in fact, the new government at the Bonn climate change talks last week actually signed an international accord for New Zealand to go coal-free electricity generation by 2025. So right at the moment, we already generate more electricity from wind than we do from coal, and more electricity from geothermal energy than we do from natural gas. And over time, in the past, electricity demand was growing. But for about the last 8 years, it's been relatively flat. And what that means is, even though we all seem to have more electric stuff in our life, electric gadgets everywhere, we're actually getting more efficient. The population's growing, we seem to be using more electrical stuff, but actually the demand for electricity has been flat. And previously, when electricity demand was growing, electricity generators would be looking at where they are going to invest next. And at the moment in New Zealand, there is enough consented renewable electricity projects to meet the demand for growth in electric vehicles should every vehicle in New Zealand be electric. So there is enough consented generation from that, and the majority of that is actually wind. So that's a real advantage that New Zealand has. It means that when you drive an electric car, at least an 80% reduction in CO2 emissions. And that's why the government is really excited about electric cars. Also, as just an ordinary person, driving an electric car is the equivalent to paying 30 cents per litre for petrol. That's if you charge at home overnight. That is a big saving. And even the most basic models of electric car can easily look after most people's journeys. 90% of all journeys in New Zealand are under 90 kilometres, which is within the range of the entry-level electric vehicles that we have around today. So based on this, the New Zealand government has set a target to double the number of electric vehicles in New Zealand every year until 2021. That doesn't sound like a lot, that's 64,000 vehicles. But when you think of the rate of doubling, by 2021, that means that around 1 in 8 to 1 in 10 of every new entry to the New Zealand vehicle fleet will have to be electric to meet that target. So how are we going to be able to do that? The answer is we're already smashing those targets on the way. In 2016, we reached the target for that year several months early, and the target for 2017 was met in July, and we're already at about 5,400 electric vehicles on the road. They're going in at the rate right now of about 400 vehicles a month, so that's more than 10 a day, or more than 10 a day. Oh, I'll just pop back for a second. The most popular way that those vehicles are coming into New Zealand, which is the light blue bar, is as used imports from Japan. So most people think about electric vehicle uptake as being brand new cars like Tesla and other things that you hear about coming out. They're actually second-hand imports. And that's another real advantage that New Zealand has, that we can bring in today cars that are cost-effective by the most popular method that New Zealanders have for buying cars, which is to buy used imports from Japan. A few also come in from the United Kingdom as well. And I'll talk a bit in a minute about how cost-effective those imports from Japan are. So a typical pure electric vehicle, an entry-level one, will do about 120 kilometres, and the average daily travel by car in New Zealand is less than 29 kilometres. There may be those of you that do more than that, but the typical New Zealander doesn't drive more than about 29 kilometres a day. And it's easy to charge an electric vehicle. All you need is a 3-pin socket in your garage or a weatherproof one outside your house. And that's where we heard from Flip the Fleet before. Their statistics are great. They've let us know that 92% of New Zealanders prefer to charge at home because that's where they get that 30 cents a litre equivalent for electricity by charging at home. But of course, when you're out and about or if you've suddenly got extra duties, it's always good to know that there are places that you can charge. And there's an increasing number of public charging stations around the place where you can fast charge an EV, which would take something like a Nissan Leaf from empty up to 80% within 20 minutes. And that charging isn't linear. You get a real boost at first and then it kind of gradually slows out. So you can even just stop for 5 or 10 minutes if you think that you might be running out of electricity for the next part of your journey. And the car is really good at telling you and reminding you if it's running short on electricity. It's not like it's suddenly going to happen and you're left stranded. You get pretty good notice about that. And there are special rates for electricity for EV owners. Obviously, you can have a look at the standard rate, but companies are starting to come out with special EV owner rates and packages as well. I've given a couple examples here of ones that are just for EV owners. You can see Christchurch is getting a pretty good deal from Meridian there. And there are, of course, other nighttime electricity rates that you can get, but we're starting to see these special EV packages coming out as well from electricity suppliers. And that will bring the cost down potentially even further than the 30 cents equivalent to petrol. And this is how the fast charging infrastructure in New Zealand is looking at the moment. You can pretty well drive from Invercargill up to Kaitaia with your electric vehicle. Almost all of State Highway 1 is done, with possible exception around Bulls in the North Island. It's a little stretch, but Kaikoura has got a charging station that's operational, and we're starting to be able to open up that bit. That's probably the gap in the South Island at the moment, but it is doable. And certainly we are working at EECA to help fill any gaps that are in that network. So it's been very quick to expand that. They're not always obvious, but there are great apps that you can download onto your phone, like PlugShare, which is an international one, which will tell you all over the world where electric vehicle charging points are. And there are companies in New Zealand that have their own apps as well, so you can find out where they were. Some of them even show you when the charger is in use or not ahead of being there. Oh, I'll go back one. So, so if we just compare how much it costs to charge at home when you're out and about, charging at home costs the equivalent of around $3 to drive 100 kilometres, which is great, and that's about the 30 cents per litre equivalent. If you want to fast charge, it is more expensive. So it's something that you would do occasionally rather than regularly, just when you need to, because it is much cheaper to charge at home overnight. And a fast charge will cost you up to around $10 per 100 kilometres for stations where they charge. Usually the pricing structure is a bit for electricity and a bit for time to occupy the charger, which encourages you to move on and leave it free for the next person to charge up. So if we look at how much that means that you can save by driving an electric vehicle. Now, I've picked here New Zealand's favourite kind of ice car at the moment, the Toyota Corolla. And it would cost just under $2,000 a year for the typical person doing 14,000 kilometres a year to fuel that car every year. In comparison, an electric vehicle, we're running out of battery and they've got range anxiety about my clicker here. A Nissan Leaf doing the same distance a year is going to cost you about $360 in electricity. So that's a huge saving. And if you put maintenance savings on top of that, you could look in very round figures at about $2,000 a year in savings for that vehicle. Let's have a look at prices of vehicles. We all know that new electric vehicles are expensive. They're expensive even if you buy a new internal combustion engine vehicle for most people. The prices will come down over time. These are recommended retail prices, but you can see that they're usually very good cars with a lot of features in them, so you need to be comparing them to the similar car. But when we have a look at the price of used vehicles, which is how most New Zealanders buy their vehicles, we can see a real difference. So these are cars that are coming in that are maybe, 2 to 4, 5 years old, coming second-hand from Japan, and their prices are starting around $10,000 now. For an entry-level Nissan Leaf, for example, if you're saving $2,000 a year in fuel and maintenance, that car will pay for itself in 5 years. Obviously, you might want more features, a more modern car, in which case, there are still some really good value cars. And if we compare them with the petrol equivalents, I've taken, this was from just yesterday, on Trade Me. Here are 2 cars. One is a Toyota Corolla, very popular, 2015 model, with an asking price of just under $20,000. For the same 2015 model with very similar features and safety equipment, again, just under $2,000, but that car will be saving you around about $2,000 a year in fuel and maintenance. And actually, the Nissan Leaf has quite a lot lower mileage than the Toyota Corolla. In fact, I couldn't find a Toyota Corolla in that price range that had as low a mileage as the example of the Leaf that was there. We also have a total cost of ownership tool on EECA's website. This is designed for fleets and fleet managers, but also for people who are buying new vehicles. It actually lays out the full total cost of ownership, including purchase price and likely residual value for that car, which is something that fleet managers take a lot of interest in. So that's the price that you're going to get for the car when you sell it on to the next person in 3 to 5 years. You can do that. We actually have every car that is sold new in New Zealand in that database, whether it's petrol, diesel, electric or plug-in hybrid. So you can just use it as a tool to look at how cost-effective and efficient your fleet could be. You can change a lot of the fields in that tool. You can put in, if you can get a better price than recommended retail, which most people should be able to negotiate, you can put the price that you think you can get in. If you don't believe the suggested residual value that we have put in, which is based on an expert company that puts a feed into that, taking data of what's been coming up at Turner's auctions, you can put your own values in for that and use it as a calculator to see how much you can save and what might be cost-effective options that you haven't looked at before. The interesting thing is to think about, if you do have a fleet or if you're going to buy a relatively new car and you like to sell it after 2 or 3 years and get the latest technology, is will the residual value of the internal combustion engine car that you're buying at the moment, will it still be the same as you think it might be now in 5 years' time when electric vehicles are becoming much more common and popular and the prices of batteries have changed? That's something to consider. So maintenance requirements. I hope you can all see this, but if not, I'll go through it a little. I've gone through where you're likely to be able to save on maintenance. You still have to do maintenance on an electric vehicle. Tyre pressure needs to be checked monthly. And in fact, that's particularly important for an electric vehicle, because if you have underinflated tyres, you will lose range from your vehicle. And if range is important, and you will be wasting electricity as well. So it's really important to keep those tyres inflated. You will need to replace tyres. Again, for safety and whatever, it's really important that you get your wheels aligned and change your tyres. You obviously have to make sure that your lights and wipers and windscreen cleaners are all the same. And when it comes to things like gear oil, not many people know that there is a reduction gear in an electric vehicle. You do have to check and occasionally change the oil in that. But brakes, you are going to save money on the cost of brakes because an electric vehicle has regenerative braking, which means that you do not need to engage and use the brakes so often. So that will save you some money there. You won't have clutch, power steering, all of those. You will have some, you won't have clutch fluid to worry about. You won't have oil filters and so on. You will need to change the cabin air filter in the vehicle. You won't have to do an engine oil change, replace the spark plugs, worry about the cam belt or the exhaust system in there. So you'll definitely have savings around those. You will notice that I haven't put the EV battery on there. That's because generally EV batteries are completely maintenance free. If anyone was here for Flip the Fleet earlier, you would have heard that an electric vehicle battery is not like the lead acid battery in your car. You know, everyone's been in the situation of one really cold, frosty winter morning, they go out to start the car and the battery is dead and you won't go. That does not happen with an electric vehicle. An electric vehicle battery just slowly degrades over time. And we heard from Flip the Fleet this morning how they have shown the rate of degradation of New Zealand Nissan Leaf and other batteries, which degrade at an average of around 3% per year. So that means if you have that car for 10 years, that battery will have lost about 30% of the range that it originally had over that 10 years. So if you bought an entry-level Nissan Leaf, which has a range of about 120 kilometres in practice, it will be down to about 80 to 90 kilometres range. Actually, that's still probably more than most people need every day. So after 10 years, you can still drive that car. It will still perform, but it will have lost range. If you want to swap up for a new one, that's fine. We don't know what the price of batteries is going to be in 10 years' time. They're falling so rapidly at the moment that it's impossible to say. It may just be that you pass that car on to someone who just needs it as a tootle-around vehicle and you get yourself the next one without necessarily having to upgrade the whole package of the battery, just like you don't usually completely put a whole new engine in your car after you've owned it for 10 or 15 years. And for people who ever go to Auckland, there's a really interesting trial happening up there at the moment with NZTA. Other regional councils may also look at this, but now at the moment EVs can use some transit lanes in Auckland, which otherwise could only be used for special vehicles like trucks. They're kind of special motorway on-ramps, so that's providing EV owners an advantage. So if you ever happen to be driving in Auckland and you see that sign there that says EV lane, if you drive an EV or plug-in hybrid, you can use that lane. It does not count just to put a little EV sticker on the back of your car because it's enforced by number plate recognition. And NZTA has actually upgraded the whole of the database so it knows from your number plate whether you are an EV or a plug-in hybrid. So, what can you do now? You've come along to talk to me, listen to me talk, thanks very much. If you haven't yet driven an EV, please go and try one at the test drives that are here today. Absolutely fantastic opportunity to take different EVs for a test drive, and it's a really fundamental step in trying to understand what the technology is all about. If you'd want to know more, if you want to watch some of the videos that we have on our website, you can visit electricvehicles.govt.nz, where we have lots of information, links through to our TCO tool, links through to videos and other resources that will help you, because a lot of people are very hungry for information about EVs. And we really look forward to you thinking about buying an EV in the future. Thanks very much.
Really informative, amount of knowledge and information. It seems a no-brainer to go EV, doesn't it, really, with that sort of information and given where New Zealand is positioned. But I'd like to throw it open to the floor. Any questions for this?
Not at the moment. When you look at the fact that most New Zealanders are buying second-hand cars from Japan, and they are already the equivalent of an internal combustion engine, then I'm not sure that that's the best use of taxpayers' money. Right now, EECA is investing $6 million a year through a contestable fund in innovative projects to help get New Zealand ready for EV uptake. That includes filling gaps in the charging network. It includes demonstrating new types of electric vehicles, like electric buses and trucks. And we think that that's actually the best use of taxpayer taxpayers' money, rather than subsidise vehicles that in most cases, and the most common way into New Zealand, are already cost effective, to actually put that money into making sure that New Zealand is really ready for electric vehicles by having great charging infrastructure and people that can service and deliver, service and maintain and look after EVs.
So Liz, you mentioned before the next funding round, access to that funding round opens in about February, isn't it? If people have...
Yes, the current funding round we will hope to announce the results of before Christmas, and then round 4 of our fund will open in mid-February.
The second point, which is coming up, right, we're doubling our numbers of electric cars, and as soon as we get to a cut-off point, then they're going to start charging us road tax again. So it's sort of, the more we go, they're going to stop us again.
So currently EVs and plug-in hybrids are exempt from road user charges. So the way that funding of our roads and how we maintain the infrastructure in New Zealand works is that if you consume petrol, you pay excise tax at the pump. If you don't use an excisable fuel, which electricity isn't, then you have to pay road user charges. It's really interesting that if you were to drive a plug-in hybrid vehicle, without that exemption, you would be paying twice. You would be paying petrol excise and you would be paying road user charges for every kilometre you have driven. So in 2021, it doesn't automatically mean that road user charges go straight on. The government will have to solve the problem of plug-in hybrids first, and it's also starting to look at all other kinds of ways that we could pay for the roads. If you have a look at, if we did put road user charges on right now, the government would actually be sending a pricing signal that petrol would be cheaper in efficient cars than electric vehicles. So I think that there's a lot of work to do ahead, and you can't automatically assume that in 2021 you will instantly get road user charges at the current rate for electric vehicles.
Do you mean?
The manufacturers do recommend that they're not towed. Obviously, if you tow them on the wheels, they will generate as you drive along, and a lot of manufacturers are not happy about that particular aspect of it. Or can they tow them? Can they tow something else? Some of them can, yes. Again, follow the manufacturer's instructions. Certainly, the Mitsubishi Outlander can tow. The Teslas can tow. The Tesla X can tow over 2 tons. So there are vehicles that are out there that will tow. Obviously, your range will reduce because you've got a lot more demand. But yes, it is possible with the right vehicle. But always follow the manufacturer's instructions.
You mentioned that electric vehicles' batteries can degrade over time. How much might it cost to, if you can, well, first of all, can you replace those batteries so that they're newer? Could you upgrade them, and if so, how much might it cost?
Right. So electric vehicle traction batteries can actually be repaired and refurbished. Unlike lead-acid batteries, when they reach the end of their life, it's just not worth it. So if you end up with some dud cells in your battery, it is possible to repair those batteries. And one of the projects that EECA is funding is for someone to set up a facility looking at providing that as a service in New Zealand. They can be refurbished. If you do need to replace your battery, like I said, the prices of batteries are changing very, very rapidly. So it's really hard to say. Right at the moment, if you needed to change a Nissan Leaf battery pack, it would cost between $5,000 and $8,000. But in 2 years' time, it might be half that. So it's really hard to say, or it might be the same price, but the battery pack will be the same size and can go twice as far. So it's really hard to say what it's going to be at a time in the future when things are changing so rapidly and technology is advancing so much. But it's only going to get better.